Hey guys, sorry I'm a little late again tonight. I had chores Mrs. Wilder was making me do around the house, so I was busy today. But I am outside since our spirit day was get out. I didn't get to take a walk, but I'm outside enjoying some fresh air in my backyard right now, so making sure I'm staying safe. So yesterday, Omri was learning more about Little Bear, some different things about him. In case you hear a bunch of noise in the background, I got some guy on a motorcycle driving up and down behind me on the street, so I apologize if I cut out a little bit. We'll see how well I do. He was learning more about Omri. He found out that he was a warrior, that he had fought in some different wars. There's another thing that came up, and I didn't mention this. When you talk about a book and they talk about the plot and what actually goes on in the story, but there's the setting. And the setting for this is England. It's not the United States. So you'll notice that they use some words that seem a little different than what we might use in English in the United States. And that's why, because this book is set in England, so you might hear, instead of like a trash can, you'll hear a dustbin or something like that that's a little different. So I'm going to read a few more pages of this tonight. I think we'll finish chapter 3 tomorrow and then move on to chapter 4 on Friday, and then take a little break for the weekend. And I'm going to try to keep up with these during what would have been our spring break as much as I can with being able to get through the story. Just when his mind was seething with ideas, such as putting plastic bows and arrows and horses and maybe even other little people, well, no, probably that was too risky. Who knew what sort of thing you might land up with? There's one of those things where I was saying, we would say in America, you might end up with, and in Britain they would say you might land up with. They might start fighting each other, but still, he knew for certain he didn't want to give up his secret, not yet, no matter how many Frenchmen had been scalped. Having made his decision, for the moment anyway, Omri turned to go upstairs, discovering only halfway up that the tin of corned beef was practically empty. Still, there was a fair-sized bit left in the bottom. It ought to do. Little Bear was nowhere to be seen, but when Omri called him softly, he ran out from under the bed and stood waving both arms up at Omri. "Bring meat?" Yes, Omri put it in a miniature plate he'd cut the night before and placed it before the Indian, who seized it in both hands and began to gnaw on it. "Very good, soft. Your wife cooked this?" Omri started to laugh. "I haven't got a wife." The Indian stopped and looked at him. "Omri not got wife? Who grow corn, grind, cook, make clothes?" "My mother," said Omri, still grinning. "Have you got a wife then?" The Indian looked away. After a moment he said, "No." "Why not?" "Dead," said Little Bear shortly. "Oh." The Indian finished eating in silence and then stood up, wiping his greasy hands on the sides of his trousers. "Now, do magic. Make things for Little Bear." "What do you want?" "Gun," he answered promptly. "White man's gun, like English soldier." Omri's brain raced. If a tiny knife could stab him, a tiny gun could shoot him. Maybe it couldn't do much harm, but then again, maybe it could. No gun. But I can make you bows and arrows. I'll have to buy plastic ones, though. What else? A horse? Horse, Little Bear seemed surprised. Don't you ride? I thought all Indians rode. Little Bear shook his head. Iroquois walk. But wouldn't you like to ride? Little Bear stood quiet, still frowning, wrestling with the novel idea. At last he said, "Maybe. Show horse, then I see." Again Omri rummaged in the biscuit tin. There were a number of horses here, big heavy ones for carrying armored knights, smaller ones for pulling carriages in the Napoleonic Wars, several cavalry horses. Those might be the best. Omri arranged 5 or 6 of various sizes and colors before Little Bear, whose black eyes began to shine. "I have," he said promptly. "You mean all of them?" Little Bear nodded hungrily. "No, that's too much. I can't have herds of horses galloping all over my room. You can choose." "One?" said Little Bear. "One." Little Bear then made a very thorough examination of every horse, feeling their legs, running his hands over their rumps, looking straight into their plastic faces. At last he selected a smallish brown horse with 2 white feet that had originally, as far as Omri could remember, carried an Arab brandishing a curved sword that's at a French or sorry guys, brandishing a curved sword at a platoon of French foreign legionnaires. Omri lifted the cupboard onto the floor, shut the horse in and turned the key. Almost at once you could hear the clatter of tiny hooves on metal. They looked at each other with joyful faces. Open, open door, commanded Little Bear. Omri lost no time doing so. There, prancing, pawing the white paint, was a lovely, shiny-coated little brown Arab horse. As the door swung open, he shied nervously, turning his face and pricking his ears so far forward they almost met over the forelock. His tiny nostrils flared, and his black tail plumed from above his haunches as he gave a high, shrill neigh. "Ah!" he cried Little Bear. In a moment he vaulted over the edge of the cupboard, and as the horse reared in fright, jumped into the air under its flying hooves and grasped the leather reins. The horse fought to free its head, but Little Bear hung on with both hands. Even as the horse plunged and bucked, the Indian had moved from the front to the side. Grasping the high pommel of the saddle, he swung himself into it. He ignored the swinging stirrups, holding on by gripping with his knees. The horse flung himself back on his haunches, then threw himself forward in a mighty buck, head low, heels flying. To Omri's dismay, Little Bear, instead of clinging on somehow, came loose and flew through the air in a curve, landing on the carpet just beyond the edge of the cupboard. Omri thought his neck must be broken, but he had landed in a sort of somersault and was instantly on his feet again. The face he turned to Omri was shining with happiness. "Crazy horse!" he cried with fierce delight. The crazy horse was meanwhile standing quite still, reins hanging loose, looking watchfully at the Indian through wild, wide-apart eyes. So I'm going to leave off right there. There's a picture of the Indian standing in the cupboard with the horse. I did notice on the cover, there's kind of a picture. There was a part that we read where Omri lifted the Indian into his hand and then put him on the floor. Kind of a picture of what Little Bear might look like as they imagine it. If you get a chance, I wouldn't do it too soon, but there is a movie that was made. It's a little different than the book. That's the thing that I always like to watch the movie after I read the book, just so I get to hear the whole story, and then you can see the parts that get left out when they make a movie. It's the same for any of the books you might read, whether it's Harry Potter or Diary of a Wimpy Kid for that matter. It might be something totally different. So anyhow, stay safe, you guys. Like I said, I miss you. Hopefully we'll be working on, or you are working on your work that your teachers put together for you. That's something to keep you going until we find out exactly everything that we're going to be doing for the rest of the year. So take care. Have a good night.